3.0 Diddy Kong. One of the many top level threats that were in Project M back in the day during the 3.0 days of the meta. Mewtwo being the king of the meta at the time, being the most broken version of the character even in Project M's entire mod lifecycle. Right behind the character was the character we're actually covering today. Good old-fashioned hoo-ha himself, Diddy Kong. This is an era of Project M where people would commonly call this game Project Recovery, mainly having to do with the fact that most of the characters in the cast were able to come back from the stage from virtually anywhere. Even some characters having really strong tether recoveries that couldn't be contested really that easily at all. It was very common in Project M at the time to avoid going off stage at all times because characters were just going to be hit off stage if they tried to combat other characters' recoveries. Combating recoveries was just way too risky at the time. Many people also know that during the 3.0 era of Project M up until 3.5, characters had virtually very busted attributes about them. One of my favorite examples of this being Ness's PK Fire that could attack on shields, Lucas's Magnet down B could break shields very easily, and just Mewtwo as a character at the time. It was definitely seen as a more chaotic game because Project M and Project Plus in its current form right now is a much more tame game compared to Project M 3.0 where everything was more chaotic. Many people consider Diddy Kong to be the second best character of all time in the 3.0 era, considering how easy of a character he was to pick up and use. And fun fact, even me, myself, I actually had a pocket Diddy Kong during the 3.0 era because he was extremely easy to use and just to pick up. I didn't really know what I was doing with the character and still I was able to beat some people in friendlies. Like, it was kind of crazy how easy this character was to use. His combos, pretty simple. Pretty much any move linked into his other moves in his moveset. Like, for example, his dash attack, which was pretty busted during the 3.0 era, and his gnar, which was also a super easy combo tool. They were really easy to use for the character. In fact, his dash attack was probably my personal favorite part of the character back in the day because you could just truly just go through people and set up combos with dash attack alone. Well, let's talk about what made this version of Diddy Kong so broken, what went wrong. His recovery was considered one of the best in the game, having little lag on both his side B and up B. Diddy Kong could virtually come back from the impossible and make it back on stage no problem. In combination with that, he had incredible tools like his two bananas that he could use at the same time, and a peanut pop gun, which were incredible on offstage and on stage, just good for his neutral, and they were good for his punish game. On top of that, his dare and up B. His up B more specifically had a much larger meter hitbox on the move that was extremely easy to hit, and his barrels could also move and fly away and randomly hit people that tried to contend with his up B when he recovered. Fighting Diddy Kong off stage was way too risky. He was clearly a beast at hitting people off stage, with whether it being his own moves or just using his bananas. He's a very mobile character as well, and his biggest strength being his punish game off stage. He could chuck items at people or just hit them at once and then probably they would be dead. A multitude of his offstage options were spikes and meteor hitboxes. I mentioned earlier that Diddy Kong was a secondary of mine back in the day, even though I really knew nothing about the advanced techniques and the real depth behind the character. It really just summarizes how Diddy Kong really was in the 3.0 era. He's definitely way different than how he is in Project Plus. He was really easy to pick up and just use. Over time, Diddy Kong would become much more of a neutral-dependent zoning character, which wasn't really a thing yet on the 3.0 version because his combos were just so good alone, you didn't really need to know much about the neutral to really just excel with Diddy Kong. Which is why my dumbass, for example, used him as a secondary and just dash attacked people and hit them and just pray for the W. But if you actually explored Diddy Kong's depth that he had at the time, he had really good neutral options and just options on stage in general. His bananas, and yes, I said bananas as in plural, he has more than one that he can use at a time, which is incredibly broken looking back. And Peanut Pop Gun are another great option too, just with controlling the neutral. They require more work to get good with, but they start to separate a good Diddy Kong player from the bad. If they understood how to use the strong neutral tools that Diddy Kong has along with his punish game, then they're probably going to have a really good time playing Diddy Kong and maybe be a good player. His bananas specifically were especially broken as because he could use two of them at once, it allowed him to trap characters with his bananas on ledge much more easily. This in general just made his neutral game really oppressive, with a lot of item spamming if you really wanted to go that route. But this is 3.0 Diddy Kong, and he's still even good without those neutral options. If you just played him and just went off the punish game, he'd still be a very solid character. He has a side B command grab as well, which is also a great option if your opponent likes to stay in shield a lot, which means he can kind of catch them. A lot of his moves are extremely hard to DI out of as well, like his dash attack, for example, which is kind of why it was so good. He was just too easy to use in general, and like I said, if my smooth brain played this character at one point, then he might have been just too easy. So considering all that, before we get to the aftermath of 3.0 Diddy Kong, let's look to some of the posts by people complaining about 3.0 Diddy Kong that I thought were funny that were made back in the day on Reddit. So this one's from a deleted Reddit account where he says, and I quote, "Yes, he's OP, because he's not punishable with his attacks that are extremely hard to DI out of. His dash attack, cough cough. He has an insane amount of stage control with 2 bananas when he's already too good without bananas or peanuts, and his up B is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I think Diddy is extremely toxic to the rest of the game, and honestly he's just not fun to play against and extremely annoying. I have a friend who's garbage and will literally dash attack every approach, throw bananas, and then when I'm off the map he will just charge his up B and then hit me and then I'm dead. His up B is like a giant flying untouchable hitbox that has a meteor on the bottom of it. Getting beat by someone who is trash by only using the most arguably broken moves of Diddy and having him talk shit afterwards is the most aggravating thing in the game he's ever offered to me. I love this game too much, but man, I hate fucking Diddy. And I know there's people out there who feel the same. Can't wait for 3.5. And wait for 3.5 they did, because people knew a big balance patch was coming on the way. Many people were worried about the future of the 3.0 meta. It was pretty clear on who the strong characters were, like Mewtwo being the best. Characters like Pit were played a lot by a lot of top melee players who were briefly switching over to Project M, and Diddy Kong was played a lot because of his ease and high reward. And not only that, there were a lot of other broken characters floating around in the meta, like Lucas, you can maybe say arguably Snake, Mario, Sonic. People were worried about peak of the meta already being found, and grand finals would just revolve around Mewtwo, Pit, Diddy Kong, etc. And people were already getting tired of all these characters having an abundance of random and crazy options in their disposal, just like, you know, Mewtwo. So the transition to 3.5, aka welcome to the nerfs, happened. Diddy Kong was hit with the heaviest nerf hammer, not as big as Pit, who was nerfed into basically being a dog shit character, but still very viable, but no longer being a very easy character to just pick up and get good with anymore. The nerfs. Diddy Kong's recovery was nerfed, his up B having more ending lag, losing that giant meteor hitbox, and he falls way faster when using the move off stage. His up smash knockback has been lowered and end lag has been increased. His neutral air has been weakened overall and is no longer busted. Some of his throws have more end lag. Down air has a much smaller hitbox. Monkey flip having much more end lag. And now he only has 1 banana at a time instead of 2, which is a gigantic nerf, and his dash attack being heavily nerfed as well. Overall, Diddy Kong was hit pretty hard with nerfs, but it wasn't enough to make him into a low tier character or into a bad character by any stretch of the means. A lot of die-hard Diddy Kong mains, and I mean the real ones, not people like me, still play the character but now would have to adjust to the new playstyle that Diddy Kong was used for. Diddy Kong now relies on more zoning than the previous version of the character, who honestly didn't need bananas and still would have been a good character. Now if you play Diddy Kong past this point, techniques like item tossing would become much more important to the character. His offstage game is still strong, but not nearly as busted as it was before. Not only that, but the fact that Diddy Kong now only has 1 banana at a time is a big change to his overall playstyle, because now he is a lot more strategic character. Now, since he only has 1 banana, you don't have to worry about being spammed at with items nearly as much. I mean, who decided even 2 bananas was a good idea? Like, oh, never mind. So where did Diddy Kong end up? Well, in 3.6 he was already a pretty solid character, seen in the meta being a top 5 character. Along with his other broken 3.0 brother, Mewtwo, they didn't get the Pit treatment where they would become virtually a shell of what they formerly were and going to the bottom of the tier list. But if you were really dedicated to the character, and those people would probably keep playing Diddy Kong. While the people who played these characters because they were busted and just liked Diddy Kong because his dash attack was really good, those people would probably drop the character. But Diddy Kong Kong was still seen around. One of the best players of the character, Junebug, actually used to play Diddy Kong and put a lot of work into the character even in 3.0 and onward. So Diddy Kong in Project Plus is still a very solid character in the meta, and only time will tell where Diddy Kong could possibly go in the future. And I'm sure like most people, we are glad we're out of 3.0 and we're glad that wasn't the final update, because everything probably would have been much more crazy. Shoutouts to my patrons for supporting this video. If you guys want to support the channel, there is a Patreon in the description. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more content like this. I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for watching. And yeah, more Project M content in the future.